So this is our data now that we have rendered in Excel for the this is data for the last 10 weeks. This is the sample. Of course, we have 10 samples being picked from every pen or cubicle, from cubicle number 1 up to cubicle number 10, this far end. But down here we have all data for this, like this data for week with this data for week 10. We have we started with the first data. If I can just come back here, this is data for weight at week 7. Let's see the initial weight. This is the initial weight. Let's see how it looks like. Yes, this data for the first week, and because the first day, because the chicks had not consumed any feed, so we are just able to take the total weight, the mean, the minimum, the maximum, the standard deviation, and the number of chicks, of course, per treatment. And then so we move to, so I want us to look at data for the last week, that's 10 weeks. For these other weeks, we just look at the trend analysis. We'll extract the charts or graphs and see how the parameters have been performing. So coming back to the last week, that was week 10, which ended on Wednesday last week of being the 11th of March, 2026. These are the parameters that we are capturing: the total weight, average weight, minimum, maximum, weight at week 9. So we were able to capture the weight at week 9. Of course, once we get the average weight in the current week of week 10, we get the weight at week 9. When you subtract this 2, of course, we get the weight gain. How much weight were the chicks able to gain that during that current week of experiment? So that's week 10. But the most important thing here to note is that these are weight gains across all the 9 cubicles, but we said the 9 cubicles, they have the treatments being replicated 3 times. So, but now the treatment average weight, now this is weight per treatment for the 3 treatments. So we are saying, like, at week 10, this is T2. T2 is treatment number 2. These are chicks that were feeding on starter crumbs, and then we graduated to finisher pellets at week 5. So by the end of the 10th week, the average weight was 1.7 kg live weight. T1, these are chicks that were feeding on kienyeji mash throughout. At the end of week 10, they were weighing 1.0 kg. Then finally we have this T3. These are chicks that were feeding on a chick mash, and then finally we graduated to growers mash. By the end of week 10, they are weighing 1.4 kilogram. So you can see the difference across the weight. Those that are feeding on the finisher pellets, they are weighing 1.7 kg. These are weighing 1.0 kg. And finally, T3, they are weighing 1. So these are very big different in terms of weight. And of course, we are saying that for those that are feeding on finisher pellets, starter crumbs and finisher pellets, the average weight is 1.7 kg as at the end of the 10th week. But we had birds there in that category that were weighing as much as 2.3 kg. We have, like, this bird was weighing 2.3 kg by the end of the 10th week. And then we also had like this one weighing 2.2 kg. So some birds had already surpassed the 2 kilogram mark by the end of the 10th week. So this again sends some signal because we are able to see how the weight is varying across the various treatments. So the other important parameter that probably is of interest to farmers, we were able to take the feed intake, how much feed each bird was consuming. So we can see here, this is the cumulative feeds consumed at the end of the week 10. We are simply saying that how much has each a bird or a category of birds within that particular cubicle consumed by the end of the 10th week. So maybe the most important to capture is we look at the feed intake per chick per week on a weekly basis. how the feed consumption was, but per treatment, then that's more ideal. So we are saying whatever is in red, we are saying that during the 10th week, at the end of the 10th week, the feed consumption per day is that those that were feeding on finisher pellets on the 10th week, each bird consumed 112 grams per day. And then for those that were feeding on kienyeji mash, each bird was consuming 96 grams per day. Whereas those that were feeding on growers mash, each chick or bird was consuming 101 grams per day. These are one of the highest feed intake. But because we said these birds, we are going to feed them ad libitum. So birds have feeds throughout day and night, and the lights are also on throughout at night, so that they then feed at their own satisfaction. Then if they are given that freedom, then the maximum amount of feeds that they will take is what of course has been computed there. Then of course we have the feed conversion ratio per treatment. How many grams did each bird require to make or to have a 1 gram weight gain? So that's also computed, but we will want to see that feed conversion ratio across all the 10 weeks, so that then we are able to make some inferences, and it will assist us to make some decisions as to which type of feed is more ideal in terms of efficiency, because then that's what then will determine the profitability of our poultry enterprises, depending on which type of feed that each bird is feeding on. Then we also are able to capture other costs of production, not only feeds. We are also able to capture how much we spend on antibiotics, the liter. This is because our system of production is deep litter system, so then you have to add sawdust on a weekly basis to ensure that the birds have a very good and healthy environment. Amount we spend on electricity, labor, and then finally we compute the total average, the total variable costs that were spent on that particular cubicle. And then we do it across the 3 treatments, so that we are able to see which treatment had the highest total variable. Like this is total variable cost per chick per week per treatment. So we are simply saying that on the 10th week, those birds that were consuming finisher pellets, each bird, the farm spent 101 shillings per chick or per bird. Those that were feeding on kienyeji mash, the total cost of production was 62 shillings. This cost includes feeds and other costs that we have seen up there. And then those that were feeding on growers mash, by the 10th week, each bird had consumed made the farm to incur 79 shillings per bird on that particular week. And then finally we have the cumulative total variable cost at the end of week 10. How much had we spent on this particular, and this is a very important statistic that farmers of course need to know, how much we have spent on each chick, on each feed category since the time the chicks were brought on that 1st of December 2025 up to us by the end of the 10th week, that was Wednesday last week. So we are saying that those that were feeding on starter crumbs and finisher pellets, by the end of the 10th week, each bird had incurred 668 shillings in terms of total production costs. But these are variable costs, of course. We know that the total production cost must also include the cost of depreciation of the equipments and the buildings, and of course the other costs that pertains to interest rate and the taxes. And then those that are feeding on kienyeji mash, as by the end of 10th week, it had costed the farm 479 shillings to produce each bird. And so we are saying you will spend 479 shillings to produce a chick that weighs 1 kg when you are feeding them on kienyeji mash. Then those that were feeding on chick mash and the growers mash, by the end of the 10th week, they had consumed, each bird had consumed 575 shillings. And this cumulative variable cost is very important, because then it's the values that will assist us to compute the profits levels and even the break-even price, at what price we shall be able